You mustn't never disappoint anyone.
Alright, good afternoon, Earth. This is Adam Sturch broadcasting from Garage Art today, Taos, New Mexico.
So how do they contribute to us?
Working on oil painting. Here We Are, I think is the name of it. So I went ahead and loosely lined in a figure. I'm going to retain the wood grain crack lines, I think, and divide them up into planes of color. But that's just kind of floating as an idea, potentiality. Right now I'm going to kind of frame her in with some bright yellow.
You're a psychologist. What is the role of emotion in general? The role of emotion in general is to let in what is nurturing and healthy and welcome and loving. Yeah, come here. Or no. Keep out what is toxic and dangerous and unwelcome. Clear? It's either yes or no. What is the role of the immune system? Same thing. Is to let in what is healthy and nurturing, but to keep out what is toxic and dangerous. The immune system has been called a floating brain. It's got learning capacity, it's got memory, it reacts to the environment, just like the brain does. So the role of emotions and the role of the immune system is exactly the same. Now here's the news for you. And here's the news that they don't teach in medical schools. But when I say news, it's not news. We've known this for decades. And some of it we've known for hundreds of years. The mind and the body can't be separated. And the emotional system, and the nervous system, and the immune system, and the hormonal apparatus are one system. And the science that studies that unity is psychoneuroimmunology. And I'm not going to go into detail. I gave a lot of the research in my books. You can look it up all over the place, but it's all one. So mind and body can't be separated. Therefore, when you're suppressing healthy anger, you're also suppressing or turning against you the immune system. And if you go to the question of why women, well, all around the world, to one degree or another, between the two major genders, which one is expected to suppress themselves, to serve the needs of others, ignoring their own, to be nice all the time, not to be angry, to be responsible for what other people feel, not to disappoint anybody. That's why women get more autoimmune disease. And by the way, if you look at indigenous communities around the world, before this stuff happens, they don't get autoimmune disease. Or not nearly to the same degree. So what am I saying here? And by the way, this idea of I don't know, why do people get sick when they suppress themselves? Why they get very stressed? When you're taking on other people's needs, when you're not expressing your emotions, you're not defending yourself, you're taking a lot of stress. And stress is not just an emotional event. Stress, because there's no separation between mind and body. So stress is a physiological event. When you're stressed, you get stress hormones. Now stress hormones are necessary. Stress is necessary. If you are threatened, you should be stressed. And when you're stressed, your adrenal gland, first of all, the emotion of fear, danger, will set off your amygdala, your hypothalamus in your brain. The hypothalamus will send messages to the pituitary gland. The pituitary will send messages to your adrenal gland on top of your kidney. The adrenal gland will secrete two hormones, adrenaline and cortisol, which makes you stronger, faster, gives you more energy. Now you can deal with the threat. That's acute stress. It's essential. But if those hormones are triggered constantly and you don't even know it, they can kill you. So the short-term effects are beneficial and necessary. The long-term effects, the stress hormones, adrenaline, cortisol, they make us anxious and depressed. They suppress our immune system. They promote inflammation in the body. They narrow blood vessels, promoting strokes and heart disease. They encourage cancer growth. They thin the bones. They make you resistant to your own insulin, so you develop diabetes. They impair the brain. They elevate the blood pressure, leading to clotting and so on. So chronic stress, based on self-suppression, trauma, and so on, is a major contributor to illness. Which also means that when we're dealing with illness, I could show you pictures, I could show you case histories of people with chronic illness who've been told, and I get these messages from all over the world. People who read The Myth of Normal, who read When the Body Says No, and they change their life, they deal with their traumas, they start saying no, they start saying yes to themselves, and disease goes away. And I've seen this over and over and over and over again. So, let's spend a few minutes talking about healing, and then I'll have to take time to answer your questions. So if trauma is a disconnection, oh, by the way, let me just say a few more words about trauma. So, what does trauma do? So trauma disconnects you from yourself. Trauma makes it hard for you to be in the present moment, because you keep reacting to the past. So many times when you're really, really upset with somebody in your life, it's not the present, it's the past. Something got triggered from the past. And Peter Levine, the great trauma researcher, calls trauma the tyranny of the past. So I give examples of that. I'm not going to go into it now, but in my own marriage, very often if I get upset with my wife, it's something in the past from childhood that's being triggered. It's not the present. So trauma represents the tyranny of the past. It reduces your capacity to respond, because it makes you more reactive, so that when something happens, instead of choosing your response, when there's trauma there, you get triggered and you just respond automatically. So you lose your freedom of choice. So trauma does all those things. So, what does healing require? Well, if the biggest calamity, as I read to you in the beginning, was the disconnection from yourself, then the healing is the reconnection to yourself. That's the essence of it. That means reconnection with your actual emotions. That takes compassion. It means you, and the same spiritual teacher said, that only when compassion is present will people allow themselves to see the truth. And it's important to see the truth, like I quoted to you from the Eating of Foods. So, when you deal with addicted people, if you judge them as bad people or weak people or morally corrupt people, you can't help them. And if you have compassion and see that they're just people who suffer, and their addiction is a response to that suffering, then you can help them. In the case of yourself, if you keep having a harsh attitude, a punitive attitude toward yourself, I shouldn't have done that, I'm a bad person, you're never going to heal. Take this question. When you ask yourself, why did you do something? You can ask it two ways. You can say, why did I do that? Or you can say, why did I do that? The first way of asking lacks compassion, and you're going to defend yourself. The second way is just a curiosity. Okay, let's look at, why did I do that? That wasn't a good thing to do. Why did I do it? So it takes compassion. And I'll finish the Look, I could talk to you 2 more days about all this stuff. And I haven't even begun to cover. Well, I gave you a very introductory immersion into the oneness of mind and body, into the oneness of human experience, human psychology and human physiology. But let me tell you, let me finish with a few words about compassion, and then I'll take questions. So compassion means, passion means to suffer, the Greek word, come with. Compassion means to suffer with. So remember, in the beginning, I quoted to you from the Bhagavad Gita. The Gita also says, when a person responds to the joys and sorrows of others as if they were his own, he has attained the highest state of spiritual union. So compassion means suffering with. When other people suffer, you feel that suffering. That's what compassion means. Now compassion, I'm going to give you 5 levels of compassion that I have distinguished. The first one is ordinary human compassion, which is when somebody suffers, you feel the pain. And that most people can do that. At least for the people they care about. Most people can do that when they look at a suffering animal. By the way, speaking of suffering animals, there was an article in Haaretz, the Israeli newspaper, about the Jewish settlers in the West Bank. You know what they do? They torture the sheep of the Palestinians. Never mind that they torture the Palestinians. They torture the sheep. Unbelievable. But ordinary compassion, you feel the pain of the other creature that's suffering. That's the first level. Then is what I call the compassion of understanding. It's not enough. It's not enough that you feel bad that somebody's addicted. It's good that you feel bad that you're addicted, but it's not enough. You have to understand the source of that suffering. And that's what I call the compassion of understanding. So you have to actually look at what happened to them. I've been talking about that. If you want to help them, you have to understand what happened. Not why the addiction, but why the pain. Number 3, the compassion of recognition. Now, when I worked in the downtown east side, I didn't use heroin, I didn't use cocaine, I never used substances, but I had addictive behaviors. And believe me, I could recognize myself in my clients. And that's the compassion of recognition. When you're looking at that, your client, and you're not up here, you're the expert, you're the professional, they're down there, and you're like trying to pull them up. No, you're 2 human beings. You might know more, you might be more fortunate, but they have the same dynamics that you do. And the sooner you recognize that, the better. Because now it becomes an encounter between 2 human beings. You're an expert in a client. The 4th level is what I call the compassion of truth. And as I said earlier, the truth hurts. When you're working with people, you better not be afraid of their pain. Because if you're afraid of their pain, you're not going to ask the right questions. It doesn't mean that you want them to feel pain, but it does mean that the pain that's there needs to be uncovered. And it will be if you're doing your job. And then you're present, compassionate to their pain. That's what I call compassionate truth. So you're not deliberately trying to hurt people, but if the pain arises, it has to, because you have to look at it. And it's painful for people to realize that they can get the love they needed, It's painful. That's why they disconnect. So as not to feel the pain. That's the compassionate truth. And then the fifth goes back to what Sayed said right in the beginning. It's what I like call the compassion of possibility. When you look at a human being, who are you seeing? Are you seeing their facial expressions, their body language, their behaviors? Or are you seeing the human being who's a creature of God, who's a creature of the universe? Are you seeing the divinity in everybody? Because they don't see themselves that way. And if you're the mirror in which they're looking, which you are, you can reflect back to them who they really are, which is the truth and the connection and the belonging and the oneness. That's what I call the compassion of possibility. And that's a difficult one because so many of us are not there. Or if we're there temporarily and then it's hard to hold on. I certainly don't live in that awareness much of the time. But we're working with people.
All right.
We can see clearly through their
I think that's it for the moment. We got her edges kind of hacked out. I like the expressive, kind of blended, bright yellow setting the stage there. But I really need to let it all set up in order to do what I think I want to do to it next. So I think that's it. Zoom in on that a little bit.
So you can clear yourself. So you can deal with your own.
But that's it for now. It's been a good week here at Garage Art. Thank you all for your support and appreciate the likes and comments on the painting we just finished yesterday here, Rupture of Plane. So stay tuned for more. Have a good night.